So welcome to No Apologies. I'm Dana Lash, and at one time in America, our leaders told us we should have grand ambitions and expectations to quite literally shoot for the moon, as JFK did. Now, quick fact. When JFK announced that America was going to go to the moon, he didn't even know how we would get there. But here he is in 1961, optimistically declaring that America would indeed land on the moon. And JFK declared that it would happen. And then America made it happen. When Ronald Reagan ran for re-election in 1984, his slogan was, "It's morning again in America." And Reagan said this despite coming off of one of the worst decades and worst terms of any president in history, the Carter administration. Hyperinflation, gas lines, and a terrible recession. But Reagan was not deterred. He simply announced a new, much more optimistic view of what the future in America would look like. Here's a bit of that famous campaign slogan that helped Reagan get reelected in 1984. Watch.
It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
That also makes me want a cup of coffee, because I swear that's the guy who does the Folgers ads. I could be wrong. Of course, though, Reagan delivered on his morning again promise, and the American economy boomed. The Iron Curtain fell. And at one time, American presidents, they kind of seemed to understand that age-old adage that believing you can be great. That's like 9/10 of the battle. American presidents are known for this kind of optimism, and this nation is known for delivering on these kinds of ambitious goals and statements put forward by our presidents. Make America Great Again was another optimistic slogan that resonated with Americans after 8 years of a president who seemed ashamed of America. And again, the economy roared, had the lowest unemployment rate in American history under former President Donald Trump. Now, point is, a good president is like a good coach, and a good coach reminds America of what it's capable of and what's possible when we put our minds to it. Not really so much with our Build Back Better president. I mean, sure, the slogan sounds interesting. Build what back better, though, exactly. And at every turn, it seems that Joe Biden would like Americans to see less as more. It's like having a candy bar that's fun size, but it's not fun. It's just tiny. And that sucks. So build back lesser, maybe? That should have been the more appropriate slogan. The Biden administration seems to want us to reduce our expectations at every turn. So take the supply chain crisis that's growing worse by the day. And as it gets worse, we don't hear our president saying that this is yet another obstacle America can overcome. But instead, it's just kind of meh, the way things are going to be going forward in the new post-pandemic America. In fact, Jen Psaki basically demonstrated the administration's attitude in a press conference with this exchange. Watch.
It was clear in March of 2020, when COVID hit, that the supply chains across the world had been disrupted. Even as the sort of work to fight back against COVID proceeded, it was crystal clear that things were not improving on supply chain. People couldn't get dishwashers and furniture and treadmills delivered on time, not to mention all sorts of other things. So why is
the tragedy of the treadmill that's delayed?
Right,
Okay, America is a consumerist society. We know this. We all love our one-click purchases delivered in an hour or so. We're spoiled rotten. But on the other hand, that's the triumph of capitalism and free markets. No country has exploited that system's potential better than America. So now we're resigning ourselves to expecting less. Jen Psaki is dismissing the concern that something like a treadmill takes months to get to its destination. I mean, obviously, she's trying to shame the reporter and Americans in general for expecting a treadmill. I love how she focuses on the treadmill. I mean, you realize that we are literally having, like, for instance, I just had a story on my radio program today about how kids in Denver, they have a milk shortage. It's not a treadmill, that's milk. And there's like actual lunch item food that is a shortage. They're having a shortage of that in Chicago. My kids' school sent out an email saying that they couldn't offer certain things on the menu like they used to because there's a supply chain disruption. So reducing everything down to a treadmill because it's the easiest thing for you to debate is so glib, and it just dismisses the concerns of most Americans who can't get things that they actually urgently need and things that they rely upon. I mean, let's not even get into medicines and antibiotics. And of course, now we're seeing that there's going to be curbs of other items too, like for instance, China and fertilizer. No, to expect a treadmill to arrive expediently, Jen Psaki thinks, oh, that's a luxury item. But the treadmill is not the point. It's a stand-in. It is an avatar. It's an example. I mean, that reporter, by the way, listed all these other goods and services that are being delayed. And it's not just treadmills, which, by the way, a treadmill is not a luxury product. It's a product that many would say in a work from home economy is about people's health, to say nothing about all the people who put it together, right? All of those jobs. In the middle of a pandemic, when you have obesity as a top comorbidity, you would think that products to promote health would matter to the administration. But again, let's get off the treadmill example, because the problems in the supply chain are so far reaching. They affect things like we're talking about school cafeterias. I can't believe the number of cafeterias facing these shortages. Chicken, bread, I told you about Denver and milk, apple juice, plastic cutlery. Supply chain woes and a lack of truck drivers are complicating even feeding students. There's a shortage of like 20,000 drivers. This seems like feeding kids is pretty essential, right? Holidays are essential too. But here's the vice president telling us back in August that we better order Christmas gifts about 5 months early if we want anything under the tree for the kids. And that's if Dr. Scrooge McFauci lets America have Christmas. So here's the vice president, the border czar, who's never been to the border czar, who I don't know where the hell she is actually lately. Kamala Harris, reducing your expectations. But this was way back in August. Check it.
The caution that if you want to have Christmas toys for your children, it might be the time to start buying them because the delay may be many, many months.
And not to be left out, you have Secretary Mayor Pete Buttigieg, and I'm using, by the way, the MSNBC Lawrence O'Donnell pronunciation because he is, as we know, one of our greatest thespians. He's been on a 2-month paternity leave bottle feeding babies as the supply chain crisis gains steam. And he says if you don't have Christmas presents for your kids this year, it's all your fault. Watch.
There's always been two kinds of Christmas shoppers. There's the ones who have all their list completed by Halloween, and then there's people like me who show up at the mall on Christmas Eve. If you're in that latter bucket, obviously there's going to be more challenges.
Yes, because it's all just about Christmas presents and not like food and medical supplies and energy and lithium and chips. Ha ha ha. As you can see, it's not only the administration that's in a reduce your expectations mode, but so is the Fourth Estate. Legacy Press has dutifully put out an APB that this is the new talking point, and the Washington Post wants you to fall in line. They put out the most meh op-ed I've ever seen, titled, "Don't rant about short-staffed stores and supply chain woes. Try to lower your expectations." So here's a couple more headlines from CNN. Quote, "Grocery store shelves aren't going back to normal this year." Oh, and another one. This time on Twitter, though, the dystopian thought saying, quote, "If you hoped grocery stores this fall and winter would look like they did in the before times, with limitless options stretching out before you in the snack, drink, candy, and frozen foods aisle, get ready for some disappointing news." So notice the phrase that they dropped in there, by the way, the before times. You know, that long ago before time in America, the days of yore. Actually, when America functioned normally with cheap, plentiful, and accessible goods. Say goodbye to all of that because that's BT, that's before times. And this is the reduce your expectation administration. And the media is working really hard to get that message out rather than hold the administration accountable for causing a reduction in your expectations, which, by the way, I really didn't think that my expectations could be reduced anymore with this administration. Now, remember, most of these problems, like the supply chain only a year ago, under a very different administration, didn't exist. And it's not just the supply chain that you're being asked to reduce your expectations about. It is everything. Reduce your expectations for an orderly and respectable withdrawal from a 20-year conflict. Reduce your expectations for a secure border. Reduce your expectations for price stability and things like a gallon of gas. Reduce your expectations for freedom of speech. Ask your parents about that. Reduce your expectations for making your own medical choices, like controlling what kind of solutions you put in your body. Reduce your expectations to ever breathe freely without a face panty, or to move freely without having to show some private medical information. Reduce your expectations for the holidays. See, rather than shoot for the moon, this administration reminds us constantly that we shouldn't even shoot for a return to any kind of normality. But in the twisted logic that only this administration can dream up, what's the explanation for a reduction in expectations? It's because this administration's policies are such a resounding success. That's right. It's the Biden boom that's causing our economy to totally collapse. And people are so flush with half worthless cash money thanks to Joe Biden's inflation, they can't get those cargo ships filled with treadmills into the dock fast enough. Here is Secretary Mayor Buttigieg telling you exactly that. Watch.
Part of what's happening isn't just the supply side, it's the demand side. Demand is off the charts. Retail sales are through the roof. And if you think about those images of ships, for example, waiting at anchor on the West Coast, every one of those ships is full of record amounts of goods that Americans are buying because demand is up, because income is up, because the president has successfully guided this economy out of the teeth of a terrifying recession.
Did a whole segment about this on radio today, and that's not what Bureau of Labor Statistics or the reporting for economics for the government says at all either. Oh my gosh. That's why you should subscribe to the newsletter. So the spin masters circle back Jen Psaki. She got this White House talking point too in an email. So here she is saying the exact same thing. Check it.
One of the reasons that there has been so much traffic in a lot of these ports is because there are more goods that are being ordered by people across the country. People have more money, expendable resources. Their wages are up. More people are working than they were a year ago. And port to port, it's different. But statistically, some of these ports have 20%, 30% increased volume as a result of that.
Actually, wages are not up, in fact, and I will say that so far people's consumption, because when you give people stimmy checks to stay home, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go buy stuff, and that's what ended up happening. But their stuff couldn't actually really get to them very well because you have all these different restrictions and lockdown and regulations, et cetera, that were keeping people from actually going and sending this stuff out and getting it in and loading it up and sending it on out and delivering it right to your front porch. Yeah, there isn't a single statistic that actually supports what she's saying. Plus, inflation's just cutting these. Inflation is outpacing any increase in wage at all whatsoever. And these are hashtag facts, FACKS. So, see, things are so good that they're bad. That's basically what they're telling you. And you don't need the treadmill and the diapers for your baby or the food for your kid to have lunch in the school cafeteria. And you don't need Christmas gifts or even Christmas with your family. Just lower your expectations, America. I mean, geez, what do you think this is, 2019? Interestingly, Americans aren't buying it. Hashtag empty shelves Joe. It's been trending on Twitter, to say nothing of Let's Go Brandon at any kind of sporting event. People are posting shots of empty shelves all over the country. There's also some pretty hilarious memes and satirical bits lampooning the very unpopular Build Back Lesser administration. That's my favorite with the Pulp Fiction. But never mind that. Hashtag empty shelves Joe. It's trending. Never mind that Joe Biden's polling at 43%. That's a sign of success because less means more. Just ask Secretary Mayor Poot and Jen Psaki and the Legacy Press. And besides, in the new Lower Your Expectations America, a president polling at 43% is really awesome. I mean, what did you expect in Biden's first 9 months? That he was going to poll it over 50%, like every other president in the last 75 years? Lower your expectations. They don't call it the honeymoon phrase for nothing. But apparently, you got to lower your expectations for Joe Biden's presidential honeymoon phase. Even the worst president in modern history, the peanut farmer, Jimmy Carter, who installed the Shah and made Iran the cesspool of hell that it is, polled at 55%. At the same point in his presidency. That dude was at 55%. That guy. I had lust in my heart. Imagine that. So if this is the honeymoon phase of the Biden administration, what does the familiarity breeds contempt phase look like for this president? I mean, I don't got to remind you that I can't even believe I'm saying this. We're only 9 months into this term. It's like we just started the road trip. It's becoming pretty clear what build back better really means. It's all I want to do whenever I say that. It's honestly the stupidest phrase ever. Build back a diminished America, right? The virus, it seems, had the effect of turning off America like the switch on a computer. In 2020, it's like the power went out and the American system short-circuited, and when the machine turned back on, we discovered a new operating system. We just had our basic loadouts. We didn't even have any of our upgrades. This new system seems designed to thwart everything America has stood for and historically been about: optimism, growth, freedom, innovation, ambitious expectations for the future. With Joe Biden as president, it seems like we've traded all of that for the Build Back Better software program, which seems to behave more like a PC virus that's infected the once prolific American system. A virus cloaked in optimistic language, but ultimately designed to reduce expectations for our future and America itself. This is depressing. So coming up, it gets worse. Remember all those Afghan refugees that we took in? Nobody could vet them properly, right? All the people that were like, oh, just come on in, whatever. And some of them that we didn't even go through the process in these transition countries that were sort of like, the third party before they came over to the United States when everything collapsed thanks to the Biden administration. Yeah, well, apparently there's a big, bad domestic abuse problem now on U.S. military bases where around 53,000 Afghans are currently housed. Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs joins me next to discuss Build Back Better. Black Rifle Coffee Company is a veteran-owned coffee company serving premium coffee to people who love America. They develop their explosive roast profiles with the same mission focus that they learned while serving our great nation. And with every purchase you make, Black Rifle Coffee gives back. In 2020, they donated over 6 million cups of coffee to veteran, law enforcement, and first responder causes. Their high-quality coffee beans are imported all the way from Colombia and Brazil and then carefully roasted at their facilities in Tennessee and Utah. They even have a signature roast called Lava Panther that's directly sourced from a small farm in Guatemala. So although the temperatures are cooling off, don't forget to keep enjoying the great outdoors fueled by Black Rifle Coffee. Sign up for the Black Rifle Coffee Club as well, and when you join, your chosen brews roasted, packaged, and shipped free to your door. You'll also get special discounts and access to exclusive products and much more. Purchase at blackriflecoffee.com/DanaTV and use code DanaTV at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. About 53,000 Afghan refugees are being housed in U.S. military bases across the United States. Now there's a big problem. Are you surprised? Many Afghan women are being abused by Afghan men. Apparently, the problem is so bad, the government is deploying what they call gender and protection advisors to stop this abuse. What a name. Joining us now is Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona. He's been asking some questions, hoping to get some answers from DHS about the vetting process of all these refugees. Congressman, so good to see you. Welcome to the program. So the protection, the gender advisors, it's almost like no one saw this coming.
Yeah, how do you miss this? It's a culture that's very different than ours. For their cultural mores, women are treated quite a bit differently than they are in the United States, and we're not perfect here by any stretch of the imagination. But you would have thought that we could have anticipated this would happen, especially since our vetting process has been so lousy, and it's almost impossible to put together. So yeah, I think we should have known this.
And it seems, and you stated something obvious here too, as well, because I mean, there's two very different forms of jurisprudence that take place. I mean, when you look at Sharia, Islamic jurisprudence, and you look at the laws and the justice that we have in the United States, beating women and caning them, that's not usually something that we do here as a penalty in the United States, and nor is any kind of domestic abuse ever sanctioned within the home as being the husband taking the wife to task, and women can walk into the courtrooms here in the United States, whereas you can't really do something like that in any country that honors Sharia as its governance. And so it seems a little short-sighted that this wasn't anticipated, but at the same time, Congressman, we could have perhaps avoided some, if not all of this, if only the administration saw what a lot of, you and Congress had seen, years out, that this wasn't going so well in Afghanistan and something was going to have to be done.
Yeah, I mean, that's why President Trump put together an exit plan with certain measurement and matrices that had to be met in order for us to withdraw. But when you start basically just saying deadline, this is going to be this day, we don't, come hell or high water, we don't care really, you run the risk of missing people who are dangerous to our residents, our citizens in the United States of America. You also run the risk of not knowing who you're bringing in with vis-a-vis the Afghan culture. So when you mention Sharia law, that's exactly right. It's a very different law. It should not be overlaid on our law. Our law is, if you're going to be in America, you need to follow our Constitution, our laws, and have respect for those. And, women don't walk out on the street alone under Sharia law. And that's what some of the complaints have been is you get a single woman and she's walking alone and she's going to be harassed and harangued, sometimes physically, sometimes verbally accosted, simply for walking along a pathway by herself. This is intolerable for the United States of America, and these folks need to be acculturated to who we are. And I'm stunned still that we're going to appoint advisors or instructors or mentors on how to treat each other. That's unbelievable, Dana, quite frankly.
Well, and I have to ask you too, Congressman. I'm not even sure how the U.S. government can even appoint any kind of what was the phrase? I think they're gender and protection advisors. Fort McCoy was one where this was taking place, especially when the State Department was out talking about pronoun day today, and they're all in with the CDC. And women don't really exist, Congressman. So why do we need these special protections for these Afghan women? What domestic abuse?
Well, I mean, yeah, we're going to start talking about birthing persons and that type of thing. I mean, we are so woke in the United States of America, whether it's the State Department or military or schools or any of our institutions, that you're right. I mean, how do we appoint these types of folks to get in there, and how will they be received? I mean, that's the other thing. How will they be received because of this very different culture? And I mean, cultures can be bridged, but there has to be willingness and an understanding and a desire to bridge those cultures. But this notion of Sharia law superseding American law, that just can't be tolerated, because if it is, then we'll never bridge a culture. These folks will never be able to assimilate into our society if they're going to be here for any length of time.
Sometimes in listening to you, if I forget that this is in the context of Afghan refugees, it almost seems like we're talking about the people who are insisting that we include pronouns on our social media profiles, as opposed to bridging the gap between people who go by Sharia law and then people who are going by the laws of our republic here. I mean, because it's so, I got to get your response. I don't know if you saw that State Department tweet. It was their actual verified State Department account that was tweeting things. It's apparently it's International Pronoun Day, which is, I love made up holidays.
Yeah. Well, what can you say? I mean, the stench of idiocy has descended on Washington, D.C., and it's almost impermeable. I mean, and this is just one more example of it. And I don't even know where to begin with the pronouns that I'd like to be used for me. But I have a feeling that my friends on the left have a few terms they'd like to describe me with. But I mean, Dana, it's absurd. It's absurd. It's asinine.
It is. Yeah. I wanted to ask you too, talking with Congressman Andy Biggs, I wanted to ask you about the IG investigation into the end of these Afghanistan operations. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, they're going to claim that it's not a full-on investigation yet. They're calling them projects. They're looking at several things. One, of course, would be the drone strike that killed 10 civilians. One's going to be just basically how the mess happened in Afghanistan when we departed. And then they're going to need to definitely, if they're not planning on it, they definitely have to expand it to include the vetting process, or the failed vetting process of Afghanis, refugees coming over to the United States. The reality is, I did hear a briefing from the Inspector General for Afghan resettlement that had been there for many, many years, and he justifiably, in my opinion, blamed both sides. And then there's also reported stories out there of our military leaders basically just misleading the American people in Congress for the last 15, 20 years on Afghanistan. I hope that that will be looked into as well.
Yeah, and of course that was the Afghanistan papers that was coming out, some very frank conversations between military leaders that I think that they would have probably phrased things a little bit differently if they ever thought that was going to be entirely public. But it was very interesting to see what they had said. I mean, they were basically forecasting everything that led to the point where we are now. One final quick question for you, Congressman. there was a lot of discussion about this, and I haven't really seen anything else written or discussed about it. For instance, the WhatsApp. Based here in the United States, this has to do with Afghanistan and how it previously before was used by the Taliban and other terror factions to organize as a digital headquarters, so to speak, in order to carry out plans and coordinate with other supporters in other places across Afghanistan. And this was put into use when they were going through town by town, village by village, on their way to Kabul to take over Afghanistan. And it's one of the reasons why it was initially reported by some foreign press on the ground there that there wasn't a lot of resistance, even from some who had been opposed to the Taliban and Taliban rule, because the Taliban was saying, look, we're coming in. If you have any traitors you want to turn into us, you can dial this number, actually put it in WhatsApp. With all of the surveillance that this government has on coronavirus and pronoun speak with every social media outfit here, how is it, Congressman, that WhatsApp was missed? And is this something that the IG is looking into as well?
Well, I certainly hope so. They need to expand this beyond projects and move right into investigations to make it thorough. Our intelligence community has suffered some severe black eyes. This is one of them that you mentioned, the WhatsApp, Taliban use of WhatsApp. But don't forget the Chinese, first time we find out about a supersonic Chinese missile circling the Earth is when they issue a press release, and then we look back and say, oh yeah, we can confirm that happened. This is a problem that we have. It was a problem in Taliban. It was a problem as we watched Taliban go about attacking people that we left behind. Don't forget, this type of surveillance is what the Democrats want to do here in the United States too, Dana. So something to be very wary of. Very wary of.
They've been so unsuccessful at catching everything else. It makes me wonder how dedicated they are to their surveillance, though. If there's any silver lining, facetiously to this. Oh my goodness, Congressman Andy Biggs, always so good to see you. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us some of your time today.
Absolutely, thanks, Dana.
Of course. It is true. I mean, think about it. I mean, they weren't able, even when you had a little Olympic gymnast telling our government about, Larry Nassar and, even with the whole Epstein thing and everything else, really, I sit back and I wonder, do I have to actually be worried about the government spying on me? I'm being somewhat rhetorical, but, clearly they have a horrible track record of it. Coming up, Southwest Airlines has decided to drop their plan to put unvaccinated employees on unpaid leave. Texas Congressman Chip Roy joins me next to discuss this and his coming legislation that will hopefully ensure no other companies can punish employees for refusing to get injected with a brand new solution. Keep it here. Big tech is taking advantage of us, and while they mine, sell, and remine our data because we are a product, they're counting their money and abusing our privacy. So if you think your emails and your texts and your messages are private and safe from governments and hackers and corporations who want to exploit you, think again. This is where Secure comes in. Secure's email platform is 100% private, and it's Swiss hosted, has no ties to the big tech companies here in the United States. And with Secure, there is no data mining whatsoever, and that's what makes Secure different. When it comes to security and privacy, Secure is just unmatched. There's a reason Secure built their company the way that they did. So take a stand and take back your privacy. Use discount code DANA, and Secure will only cost you $7.50 a month for full access, which is nothing. Visit secure.com today and create your secure email address and account. Don't forget code DANA for 25% off for a whole year. That's secure, SEKUR.com, promo code DANA for 25% off. So after pushback, Southwest Airlines has now decided to scrap their plans to put unvaccinated employees on unpaid leave. That's a step in the right direction. Is it enough? I don't know. Texas Congressman Chip Roy joins me now to discuss this and his coming legislation that would require all companies that took bailouts, our dollars, to have to pay them back in full if they fire any employees for not getting injected. Congressman, it's so good to see you. Thank you for joining me. And I want to ask you about the Southwest thing, but there's a huge problem that has developed here in Texas. So, and it relates to this mandate and hamburgers. We're going to tie these two together in a very weird way. So In-N-Out, which is, devilishly Californian based, they said that they do not support requiring their employees to get vaccinated. I haven't heard from Whataburger, though, and I know that that's a Texas thing. Like when you move to Texas, you live in Texas, or you visit it more than 3 times, you are automatically more loyal to Whataburger than you are In-N-Out. Where do you fall on this? And I need to get your thoughts because this is more important than anything else in my household.
Well, first of all, Dana, great to be on the show. Hope Chris and your wonderful family are doing well. I'm certainly delighted that In-N-Out took the stance that it took. It was pretty strong, actually, the statement they put out, that they weren't going to allow them to be told what to do with respect to their employees. I have not seen a statement from Whataburger. There needs to be one. There should be one. I would note, of course, that the Whataburger of our youth and of the long history of Texas is of course, now a little changed in that it was bought out by a Chicago, hedge fund or whatever. But so we can always blame it on Chicago if we have to. But we'll see what they do. But I want Whataburger to be like Southwest Airlines and other Texas companies. See the light, do the right thing. And Southwest's got to go further, by the way. They need to step it up a little bit beyond just not firing people. And unpaid leave only gets you so far. So we'll see. But I'm glad to see they took the step they took.
And I am too. I wish, and I'm with you, I wish they would go a little further. The thing that's really weird with this, and I know you saw this, OSHA and modifying one of their CFRs, and I know that there was a change on OSHA's website where originally it was if you have any kind of adverse reaction to a mandated injection, then that needs to be recorded. Now that's different, and they've changed it. And on the website, they were saying, well, it's not going to be recorded. We don't want to provide any kind of disincentive or de-incentivize anybody going out and getting an injection, which I would think like not recording something, if it's rare and safe, I would think that not recording it, that to me would disincentivize me from doing that. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, and I don't know if there's anything that Congress does or can do as it relates to OSHA, but that seems weird to me.
Yeah, well, I've got legislation I'm potentially introducing to basically disband OSHA. We're looking at it and trying to figure out what we can do to undermine the power of these bureaucrats to go step in. And look, and I'll back up just 1 second and say, just to be clear for listeners, the President of the United States has no authority under the Constitution, no legal authority to come in and mandate that companies do this. And in fact, it's debatable whether any mandate even exists right now, right? He came out and gave a speech. And now we've got OSHA coming in, and they're starting to threaten that they're going to enforce. But what we need is for businesses to do what they're doing and start to push back, because the administration can't bully their way through this if enough people in the United States say no, if In-N-Out says no, if law enforcement start walking, right? You end up in Chicago, like we're seeing right now, where you've got the mayor having to face members of the police in Chicago saying, nope, we're out. Well, heck, they're already bleeding people, right? Because of the defund effort there, Austin, Texas, as you know, we're both in Texas. We're facing that. So now you've got, OSHA overstepping its boundaries as always. And this is the problem. And I said this last night on the floor of the House of Representatives, not to digress too much, but Republicans have got to get religion on stopping funding the bureaucrats that are killing freedom and going after the very businesses that we run in our lives. We've got to stop it. In 2023, if Republicans don't stop this, you should throw every Republican out on their ear who doesn't stand up against spending and funding these bureaucrats who are going after our parents and school boards, going after teaching our children that America's evil, and going after our businesses and shutting them down because they dare not to want to have a forced vaccination when natural immunity is perfectly good and when people can make conscientious decisions for themselves and their families and businesses. To hell with this administration. Stop funding it, stop doing it, and the American people shouldn't listen. And governors like Abbott and others need to keep pushing back and fighting back on it.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And you mentioned you're talking about the funding of this too, and I hope that people take your words to heart about any Republican that would support any of this stuff that the administration's proposing. The budget bill, there's been a lot of questions about this during the White House press conferences with Jen Psaki, and Janet Yellen has weighed on this. They're talking about increasing that threshold, the $600 transaction with people's bank accounts to maybe $10,000, which, I mean, to me, it's no difference. I mean, I know you remember this, Congressman, because you were really active around this time as well. Back in 2008, 2009, the Tea Party. I remember Lois Lerner, a huge official with the IRS who pled the Fifth Amendment. She was in charge of the department that would grant exemptions to these groups who simply wanted to organize and exercise their free assembly and free speech. And the IRS, they had receipts. It was proven in a court of law that these people were targeting anybody that used patriot, conservative, Republican, anything like this in their name, and denying them the ability to actually organize and fund issues and candidates. And so they had to settle. They ended up settling the IRS with all these different groups for a lot of money. And of course, that's our money. And now we're supposed to take, Congressman, this administration's word that, yeah, the IRS doesn't want to look at everything. They just want to look at transactions, starting at, $600 for now, unless that threshold is increased. This seems insane to me. So where's the Fourth Amendment protection? Where's the right to privacy in any of this? And where's credibility with the IRS?
Yeah, these are all the right questions, and the American people need to know that this legislation the Democrats are trying to jam through, and thankfully Sinema and Manchin are at least trying to hold the line, although I'm not going to hold my breath that ultimately they won't cave. People need to know this isn't about the debt. The debt's terrible. It's undermining the dollar. It's undermining our economy. But the problem is, it's what I was saying before, we're funding the bureaucrats that are targeting us. They want to go after you, okay? Everybody listening to this radio program, this government, this president, they want to come after you. They want to come after your family. They want to take a dad who wanted to criticize a school board because his 9th grade daughter got raped in a bathroom by a dude wearing a skirt. They want to go after him and say he's a domestic terrorist. They want to use the Internal Revenue Service to come after you. They want to come after you because they want to know where your guns are. They want to come after you because you dare to question whether or not there's, or to state there are two sexes. They want to come after you because you question the wisdom of government or you question critical race theory. And by the way, we are funding that with our tax dollars, but more importantly, borrowing money and printing money to continue to fund a large government. And by the way, major corporation. We have corporate cronyism, healthcare cronyism, big tech cronyism, big oil cronyism. We're funding the companies that are also sticking it to you every single day. That's why Republicans need to get religion. And they're not showing a backbone. They just voted 2/3 of Republicans. 2/3 of Republicans in the House of Representatives just voted for the National Defense Authorization Act. The Senate and the House are probably going to vote for it again when it comes out of conference that had language in there, as you know, to go after guns, red flag law language, that had language in there to draft our daughters, that had language in there that would give more money to a Department of Defense without any accountability for Milley or for Austin. It continues to teach woke diversity garbage and chief diversity officers, teach climate change. That's all real, and Republicans should be ashamed of themselves.
There's no excuse for any Republican voting to advance any of that. The NDAA, that's awful, and of course, it's depriving veterans of Second Amendment rights. Unbelievable. Yep. One last topic for you, and I'm really interested in getting your thoughts on this as well, because I know that we swore in apparently the first 4-star admiral, a man who identifies as a woman, Rachel Levine, as I understand. And I was talking a little bit earlier with one of your colleagues in the House about the State Department tweeting out about pronouns. It's International Pronoun Day. But I've been more interested in the fact that here you had China sent up this hypersonic missile that traveled around the Earth at low orbit. And also now apparently North Korea had fired a rocket out of a submarine, and you have China and Russia together carrying out naval war exercises. I'm a little bit more interested in that, but I just wish that our military and our military leaders, Congressman, were focused on those things as well. What are your thoughts on this, and is there anything hopeful you can say to us about military preparedness?
Yeah, well, I'll say the hope lies, of course, in the great patriots, the men and women who have bled, died, fought for our country, did so over the last 20 years. You know that's where the hope is. That's where I know where the hope is. But where the hope is not is among the brass at the Pentagon. The brass at the Pentagon, they need their butts cleared out just as much as every other agency and every other large corporation in America that's steamrolling the American people every single day. I do not give carte blanche to the Department of Defense. I do want to stand up for our men and women in uniform who are fighting and defending and standing up for us every single day. Look, right now, the Chinese are going to kick our butts from here to yonder if we don't get our eyes focused squarely on the prize, which is making sure we defend liberty and protect our country, and stop having generals who are sitting up with their nails getting done and complaining about their nail polish, or having some ridiculous pronoun effort by the State Department, or having diversity officers and woke garbage being taught at the Department of Defense or at our military academy. Knock it off. This is not a social engineering experiment. It's an organization that is designed to kill people and blow stuff up. And we better damn well get back to doing that and figuring out how we're going to position ourselves to hold the rest of the world in check and have a large, expansive effort in the Western Hemisphere to push back on China, grow our economy, and get back on offense. Because right now, the Chinese are laughing at us while we're playing woke political correctness game.
Yeah, it's not like we can defend ourselves by screaming things about my truth. That's for sure. Congressman Chip Roy from the Republic of Texas. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you.
God bless you, Dana. Take care.
God bless. Take care. All right, folks, you heard us talking a little bit about this. Coming up, the new OSHA policy change for employers on reporting these adverse side effects from these injections. This is some very new stuff, and it's recent changes. It's amazing. Keep it here. Thanks to Biden's economic policies, job numbers have been abysmal, inflation skyrocketing. Instead of following the previous administration's pro-business agenda that had the economy booming, Biden wants to tax corporations and pass trillion-dollar bills we can't pay for. You should be proactive and take steps to protect your wealth and your retirement by investing in gold and precious metals. And Legacy Precious Metals can help you. Washington prints money to pay for their outrageous bills, but all that does is devalue your dollar. Gold offers you a hedge against inflation. And as the dollar gets weaker, gold gets stronger. The folks at Legacy Precious Metals are the gold standard when it comes to investing in precious metals. They have a team of experts who can counsel you on the best options for you and your family. Don't leave your retirement to chance. Call Legacy Precious Metals at 866-580-2088 or visit them online to download their free investor's guide full of useful information at legacypminvestments.com. This final story today is particularly troubling. So what if I told you that a government agency that was literally invented to protect employees' health and safety was altering its policies so that employee health and safety protections would be reduced? Because that's exactly what OSHA just did. So OSHA has changed its guidance on adverse reactions to mandated coronavirus vaccines, guidance that was in place until just last May. So a little background on OSHA. Obviously, that's the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA was created to assure safe and healthy working conditions for men and women. And OSHA gives guidance to private sector employees regarding safety conditions. And this guidance affects, I think, over like 100 million private sector workers. Now, again, OSHA was created to reduce injuries and illnesses and fatalities in the workplace. It's literally their job. It's what they do. So it makes sense that OSHA would want employees who suffer any kind of adverse reaction to an injection mandated by the federal government through the employer to report it. After all, if a company is going to require its employees get vaccinated, then of course employers ought to report if their employee had an adverse reaction. I mean, many employees are only taking the vaccine and getting the injection because they've been forced to by their employer. So here was OSHA's guidance on recording adverse reactions as of May. They said, quote, if you require your employees to be vaccinated as a condition of employment, then any adverse reaction to the COVID vaccine is work-related. The adverse reaction is recordable if it is a new case and meets one or more of the general recording criteria, end quote. See, those are the words you would expect from an agency that exists to protect workers, you know, the thing that OSHA was created to do. But here's OSHA's new guidance on recording adverse reactions to the vaccinations. They write, quote, OSHA will not enforce 29 CFR 1904's recording requirements to require any employers to record worker side effects from COVID-19 vaccination at least through May 2022, end quote. Those are, like, it's up on their website. Those are the words of a corrupted agency that abandoned its mission of protecting workers. OSHA wants to know if someone slips on a banana peel in the break room, but they don't want employers to record and report adverse reactions to the COVID injection that is mandated by the federal government through employers. Why? Well, they say that they don't want to disincentivize the employer's vaccination efforts. And if adverse reactions to the jab are exceedingly rare, as we're told, then why would reporting rare adverse reactions by private employers be discouraged? I mean, adverse reactions aren't even a thing, according to the CDC and Dr. Fauci. We're constantly told that we need to not worry about them. So why is OSHA changing its guidance on COVID vaccinations, telling employers that they don't have to report adverse health outcomes when they're supposedly so exceedingly rare? Maybe it's because adverse reactions are happening and maybe they're not as rare as people would like for us to believe, and they don't want anyone to know because the administration is hell bent on its injection or bust policy. Who knows? No one's going to give you answers, so I guess we're free to speculate. One thing is absolutely certain: OSHA is not interested in protecting employees' health and safety as much as its intent on advancing the administration's mandated vaccine policy. And it also proves that all government agencies, even ones invented to protect workers, can easily become tools of the state that simply exist to implement the state's objectives. All this does, by the way, is make every thinking human being wonder what's really going on. This destroys institutional trust rather than increases it. And the move from OSHA will fuel every conspiracy theory imaginable, because it's more proof that public health is not what our government's pandemic response is ultimately about. Increasingly, it seems to be about a whole lot more than that. That does it for us tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, and don't bend the knee.